Welcome to the channel. This is the place for scary stories. Simple, chilling, and made for anyone who loves a good fright. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a story. Drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is. We'd love to know. It started with the footsteps. Natalie lived alone in a quiet second-floor apartment, tucked into the corner of an aging building that always smelled like dust and old carpet. She liked it that way, quiet, predictable, routine. She worked from home, kept to herself, locked every door, and double-checked every window. Which is why when she heard the soft creak of floorboards behind her one night, she froze. She just finished brushing her teeth, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, when the sound echoed down the hall. Just one step. Slow. Deliberate. She turned off the faucet. Silence. She peeked into the hallway. Empty. Every light was on. Her front door, dead-bolted. Windows latched. Nothing was open. Nothing was broken. She told herself the building made noises it always had. Old wood changing temperature, maybe even a neighbor. She returned to bed. Locked her bedroom door, she always did that, just in case, and fell asleep with the TV playing softly in the background. But she woke up around 3:12 a.m. The TV was off. Her bedroom door was open, and the hallway light was on. She sat up slowly, her skin prickled. She always turned that light off, and she always locked the door. She checked her phone. No messages. No alerts from the security app. No power outages. Nothing. She got up, heart racing, and checked every room. Every lock, everything was as it should be, except for the single wet footprint in the kitchen, a bare foot. Just one. Pointing toward the hallway. She didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, she installed a second lock, a chain. She bought pepper spray. She told herself she was being careful, that it was just paranoia. Maybe she left the door unlocked. Maybe the footprint was hers. Maybe she spilled something and forgot. But she didn't forget what she heard the next night. 2 footsteps in her hallway, one after the other. She held her breath, waited. Silence. Then the soft creak of a floorboard. She picked up her phone and dialed 911. The operator stayed on the line as she whispered, her voice trembling, explaining that someone might be inside her apartment. Police arrived within 10 minutes. They searched every inch, checked every closet, every possible hiding space. No signs of entry. No one found. They told her it was probably just anxiety, offered to increase patrols in the area. Natalie nodded, thanked them, but she didn't believe them. She knew someone had been there. 3 days passed. Nothing. No sounds. No footprints. She started to feel silly. Maybe the officers were right. Maybe it was all in her head. Until the 4th night, she woke up to the sound of her own voice, not speaking, breathing. She opened her eyes. Something was breathing at the foot of her bed. Slow, wet, close. She sat up, nothing there. She turned on the lamp. The room was empty. She stood up, hands shaking, and walked around the bed. No one. But the blanket was pulled back on the other side. She hadn't done that. And on her pillow, a single long strand of dark hair. Natalie had blonde hair. She didn't sleep at all after that. The next morning, she bought cameras, set them up in every room. Living room, kitchen, bedroom, hallway, motion activated, cloud stored, auto notifications. She watched them constantly, waiting. For 2 nights, nothing happened. Then on the 3rd night, she got a notification at 2:43 a.m. Motion detected, hallway camera. She opened the app. At first, the footage showed nothing. Just the dark hallway, barely lit by the night light. Then, from the left side of the frame, a figure stepped into view. Tall, thin, pale, moving slowly as if floating. The figure walked toward her bedroom door, then stopped, and turned to stare directly at the camera. No eyes, just smooth, blank skin. Then, it smiled. Not a twitch, not a smirk, a full smile, stretching impossibly wide. Natalie dropped the phone. The footage kept playing. The figure moved out of frame. Moments later, motion detected, bedroom camera. She didn't look. She called the police. When they arrived, she was huddled in the corner of her room, eyes wide, knife in hand. They found no one. Again, but this time they believed her, because every camera feed was wiped, every file gone, except one. A single image remained on the bedroom cam. Natalie asleep, and behind her, a pale figure crouched low, mouth inches from her ear. She never stayed in that apartment again. She packed a bag, moved in with her sister across the city, and refused to go back, not even for her things. The landlord understood. She wasn't the first tenant to leave like that. But even there, the footsteps returned, late at night, always two. And one evening, she found her sister's door wide open. Inside, her sister was fast asleep, and on the pillow next to her, a single long black hair. Natalie screamed, but no one heard it. The turbulence started 15 minutes after takeoff. Flight 109, a red-eye from Newark to London, was cruising through heavy cloud cover when the first jolt hit. It wasn't unusual. Elise had flown enough times to know turbulence came and went. She took a sip of warm airline coffee, leaned back, and tried to focus on the movie playing silently on the seatback screen. Then the second jolt hit. Harder. The lights flickered. A cart toppled in the aisle. A baby started crying somewhere near the back. Elise tightened her seatbelt and glanced around. Some passengers looked uneasy, but no one was panicking. A flight attendant hurried past, her smile tight and brittle. The captain's voice crackled over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a rough patch of weather. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We'll be through this shortly." But it didn't pass. The plane rocked again. Then again. The lights flickered more violently, staying off a fraction longer each time. Elise's screen glitched, lines of static, then black. She turned to the window and stopped breathing. There was something outside. At first she thought it was lightning, just a strange flash through the cloud. But no, it was steady, a pale blue glow. It was keeping pace with the plane. Elise leaned closer. The glow was just beyond the wing, hovering in the clouds like an eye. And then it blinked. Her breath caught in her throat. She turned to her seatmate, a man in a gray hoodie snoring with his head against the window. She shook him. "Hey, do you see that?" He blinked awake. "What?" She turned back. The glow was gone. "Nothing," she muttered, heart racing. But the turbulence didn't stop. It got worse. Over the next 10 minutes, the cabin shook so violently that trays flew from laps, overhead compartments burst open, and screams echoed through the fuselage. The oxygen masks dropped with a mechanical hiss. Then the lights died completely. For a few seconds, the plane was silent, drifting in darkness. When the lights came back on, they were dimmer. Wrong. A dull greenish hue, like seawater filtered through algae. People looked pale under it, skin tinged with gray. The captain didn't speak again. No flight attendants appeared. Elise unbuckled her seatbelt. "Something's wrong," she said to the man next to her. But he was asleep again, mouth open, face slack. She shook him harder. Nothing. She stood, turned, looked down the aisle, and her breath caught. Every passenger was asleep, or unconscious. Some were slumped forward, others leaned back with heads tilted at impossible angles. She stumbled into the aisle, heart pounding. "Hello, is anyone?" A sound stopped her, whispering. Soft, endless whispers. She turned. The overhead lights began to dim, one by one, from the back of the plane forward, back, as if something was crawling through the cabin, swallowing light. She ran toward the cockpit. Doors were locked, no answer when she banged on them. "Elise," she froze. That voice hadn't come from behind the door, it came from the intercom. "Elise." It said her name again, softer now, familiar, her mother's voice, but her mother had been dead for 3 years. "Elise, why did you leave me there?" "No," she whispered. "No, you're not real. Elise." The voice shifted, became deeper, guttural, wrong. "Elise." She backed away, hands shaking. The lights continued to die. Then the aisle floor began to ripple. She blinked, thinking she was seeing things. But no, the carpet moved like water. And rising from it, slowly, something human-shaped, tall, slender, faceless. It wore a flight attendant's uniform, but its arms were too long. Its hands dragged across the seats as it walked. Where it touched, fabric rotted, plastic melted, metal corroded. It turned its head toward her, though it had no eyes. "Elise," it said again. She ran. Back down the aisle, past the sleeping passengers who no longer looked real. Their skins sagged. Their mouths hung open wider than they should. One of them twitched violently, then went still. She made it to the emergency exit, hammered at the handle. The door didn't move. Behind her, the thing drew closer. She turned, and suddenly the plane was full of water. Cold, dark, endless water. She couldn't breathe. She clawed at the door, panic surging through her lungs, her vision darkening, and then she woke up. Elise gasped, sitting upright in her seat. Sunlight streamed through the window. The cabin was calm. Passengers chatted softly. The movie on her screen played quietly. The man in the gray hoodie sipped his drink. "You okay?" he asked, smiling politely. She nodded slowly, unsure. I think I had a nightmare." he laughed. "Turbulence'll do that." She looked around. Everything looked normal, but then she saw it. The overhead light above row 13, where she sat, flickered just once, and her screen went black. The reflection staring back at her wasn't smiling. The man next door. When Rachel moved into the cul-de-sac on Hollow Birch Lane, the realtor called it a quiet neighborhood. That had appealed to her. After years in the city, sirens screaming, strangers pounding on apartment walls in the dead of night, she was ready for quiet, stillness, trees, lawns, barbecues, and neighbors who waved from driveways, and it was perfect. Except for the man next door. He lived alone in a squat, faded greenhouse with all the curtains drawn, even during the day. Rachel never saw anyone come or go, never saw a car in the driveway, never caught a glimpse of him picking up mail or watering a plant. The lawn was too neat, the windows too clean. He was always just there. His name, she eventually learned, was Mr. Hanley. "Lived here forever," said the mailman. "Don't think he's left the block in years." That didn't sit right with Rachel, but she let it go. Everyone's entitled to their privacy. But then the notes started. The first was taped to her front door one morning. "Your porch light is too bright. Please keep it off after midnight." No greeting, no name, just neat handwriting in blue ink. She turned off the light that night, not wanting to start anything. But it bothered her. She hadn't seen anyone place the note. The second came a few days later. "Your TV is too loud. I can hear it through the wall." That confused her. Mr. Hanley's house wasn't even attached to hers. A full driveway and a row of bushes separated them. She started watching with headphones. Then came the third. "Stop looking through your windows at night. It's rude to stare." Rachel sat with that one for a long time. She hadn't looked through any windows, at least not toward his house. She crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. That night, at 3:17 a.m., she woke up to the sound of tapping. At first, she thought it was the rain. Then she realized it was rhythmic. Tap, tap. She sat up. It was coming from her bedroom window. She crossed the room slowly, heart pounding, and pulled back the curtain. No one was there. But there, stuck to the glass, was another note. "You forgot to close the curtain." She staggered back, locked the window, checked all the doors, turned on every light. She didn't sleep. The next morning, she marched to Mr. Hanley's house. She knocked once, twice, no answer. She knocked again, harder. The door creaked open. "Mr. Hanley?" she called. No response. Against her better judgment, she stepped inside. The air smelled like dust and mothballs, old wood, and something faintly metallic. The house was silent, too silent. No TV, no ticking clock, no hum of appliances. Everything was pristine, like it hadn't been lived in at all. Then she saw the pictures, dozens of them, covering one wall of the living room. Photos of her, taken at night, through her windows, through the slats in her blinds, brushing her teeth, reading, sleeping. Every image was time-stamped, dated, organized. Her breath caught in her throat. She backed out slowly, hands shaking, and ran back home. She called the police. They came, searched the house, but it was empty. No photos, no furniture, no trace of Mr. Hanley. The officer looked confused. "Are you sure it was this house?" She stared at the peeling green paint, the shuttered windows. "I'm sure," he frowned. "Records say this place has been vacant for 6 years." "That's not possible," she whispered. "He lives here. He's been watching me." They left with promises to keep an eye out. Rachel didn't sleep that night either. The next morning, the house was gone. Not burned, not collapsed, just gone. An empty lot stood where it had been, grass growing wild and untouched. Rachel stood at the edge of her driveway, staring in disbelief. That afternoon, she found one final note taped to her back door. "Thank you for noticing me." She moved out a week later, but wherever she went, Chicago, Denver, Portland, notes followed. On her windshield, on her apartment door, on her bathroom mirror. Always the same handwriting, always the same message. "Stop closing the curtains. I miss our time together." And always, every night, tap, tap, tap on the window. Everyone in town remembered Grinner's Hollow. It was never on a map, never advertised, never scheduled. It just appeared. One morning in late October, there it was. Tents of red and white stripes rising from the edge of the woods, lights strung like veins across black poles, a Ferris wheel so tall it swayed with the sky. There were no workers setting up, no vehicles parked nearby, just fog, and the lingering smell of burnt sugar and rust. 12 years ago it came, and 12 years ago it vanished along with 4 children. They never found the bodies. Now, 12 years later, the hollow had returned, and I was going back. I was 8 when it first came. My brother Milo was 10. He disappeared the night we visited. One moment, he was holding a cotton candy bigger than his head, grinning with pink-stained teeth. The next, he was gone. Just gone. I remember screaming. I remember my parents searching. I remember the police, the flyers, the interviews. None of it mattered. Grinner's Hollow packed up and vanished overnight, like it had never been there. People moved away after that. Others whispered theories, kidnapping, a cult. Maybe Milo just ran away. But I remembered what I saw. The man in the striped suit, the one with the wide, waxy smile and eyes that never blinked. The one Milo followed behind the tent, even when I screamed for him not to. Now I stood at the edge of the woods, 20 years old and tired of pretending it didn't haunt me. Grinner's Hollow had returned, and I had unfinished business. It was quieter this time. The main gate was an arch of black wood with a crooked sign hanging from the top. One night only. Come smile with us. The letters rearranged themselves when I blinked. I stepped through the gate. The air was thick. Not fog exactly, something heavier, like syrup, like breath. The music played softly from nowhere in particular, a warped Calliope tune that stuttered in and out of tune. The attractions were all the same. Tilt-a-whirl, funhouse mirrors, a carousel that spun without sound. Carnival barkers stood by the games but didn't speak. They just smiled. Every one of them wore identical face paint, red lips stretched wide, white cheeks cracked like porcelain, and hollow black eyes. "Ticket?" one of them asked as I passed. "I don't have one." He tilted his head. "Everyone pays." "With what?" He grinned wider. "We'll collect later." I walked on. Past the food stalls, which smelled like rot, I found the tent, the big top. It stood at the heart of the hollow, pulsing with light, the fabric swaying though there was no wind. Main event, one night only, was painted across the flaps in something too dark to be paint. The man in the striped suit waited outside. Just as I remembered, white face, black eyes, red and white suit, and a grin carved too deep into his cheeks. "Back again," he said, as if no time had passed. "You took him," I said. "My brother." "We invited him," he said, "and he accepted, just like you did, by stepping through the gate." I didn't say yes, he nodded once, slowly, "but you didn't say no." He opened the flap. The lights inside blazed gold. "Let the show begin," he whispered. Inside, the seats were full. Families, couples, children, all sitting silently. None of them blinked. Their eyes were wide, mouths hanging slightly open. Every one of them had that same red-lipped smile painted across their faces. But I couldn't hear them breathe. They weren't dead. They just weren't right. I sat, the lights dimmed, and the show began. The ringmaster, the striped man, appeared in a puff of ash. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called, though no one clapped. "Tonight we welcome a special guest, a returner, a seeker, a sibling." A spotlight hit me. I stood frozen as every fake smiling face turned toward me. "Let's begin," the ringmaster said. The acts were grotesque. A contortionist bent backward until her spine cracked like a whip and her head faced the wrong direction. A juggler tossed knives into the air, each one stabbing into his own limbs, blood pouring, but he never stopped smiling. A lion tamer opened a cage that held no lion, just a shrieking shadow that ripped him apart in silence. The audience clapped, hollow and mechanical. I tried to leave. The tent flaps had vanished, the walls rippled like skin under heat, and then the final act. A cage descended from the ceiling, ropes creaking. Inside was Milo. He looked exactly as he had 12 years ago. Same height, same clothes, cotton candy still stuck to his fingers. He looked at me and smiled. Not the grin painted on the others, a real smile. Tired, pained. "Help me," he mouthed. The ringmaster appeared beside him. "For our final trick, reunion." He snapped his fingers. The cage door opened. Milo stepped out. I ran to him, held him. He felt solid, real, but something was wrong. His skin was cold. He didn't blink. "Come on," I whispered. "Let's go." He didn't move. "I can't," he said softly. "They won't let me leave, not unless someone takes my place." I froze. The ringmaster's grin grew impossibly wide. "An old rule," he said, "fair and square." "No," I said. But Milo looked at me, tears in his eyes. "I want to go home." I looked back at the crowd. Still, silent, waiting. "I'll stay," I said. Milo gasped. "No, you can't. I'm not leaving you again." The ringmaster bowed, accepted. Darkness fell. When I opened my eyes, I was in the cage. I watched as Milo stepped out of the tent into daylight. He looked back only once. He was crying. The ringmaster stood beside me. "Smile," he said. "You're part of the family now." He handed me a mirror. Paint already covered my face. Red lips, white skin, black eyes. I screamed, but only in my head. Outside, I smiled. Grinner's Hollow disappeared the next morning. No tents, no lights, no rides, only a single note pinned to a tree with a red-tipped nail. One in, one out. See you next time. They say it'll come again in 12 years, and when it does, I'll be waiting, with a smile. The rain came down in sheets the night Aaron arrived at the Bellwether Inn. The place loomed at the end of a winding mountain road, surrounded by dark pines and mist that clung to the windows like breath. Her GPS had long since stopped working, and the inn didn't appear on any map. But she followed the directions in the email, step by step, until there it was. The crooked sign, the sagging roof, the warped porch. It had been her grandmother's last wish. Go to Bellwether, by Hay. Stay one night, then everything will make sense. Erin didn't understand it, but she honored it. She stepped into the lobby, suitcase in hand, and felt the air shift. Cold, still, like the building hadn't breathed in years. At the front desk stood a man who looked like he'd never left. Thin, gray, his uniform too large, sleeves hanging past his wrists. "Welcome," he said, voice dry. "You have a reservation." Erin nodded, unsure how he knew. "Room 7, he continued. "Top of the stairs, end of the hall." She opened her mouth to ask more, but he turned and walked into the back room without another word. The key was already on the desk. Upstairs, the floorboards creaked beneath her feet. The hallway smelled like mothballs and old books, yellowed wallpaper peeled in long, curling strips. Room 7 looked like something preserved in amber, lace curtains, an iron bed, a cracked vanity mirror. On the nightstand was a single sheet of paper. "Do not open the door if someone knocks after midnight." She stared at it for a long time, then folded it up and tucked it into her bag. At 11:52, Erin was still awake. The storm had worsened, wind howling through the gaps in the walls. Her phone had no signal, no data, no time. She checked her watch, 8 minutes to midnight. She didn't know what she was waiting for. Then, right on time, 12 sharp, there was a knock at the door. Slow, heavy, knock, pause, knock. She sat frozen in bed. It came again. Knock, knock, and a voice. Low, strained. "Please." She didn't move. "I can't see," the voice whispered. "It's dark." Her breath caught. She recognized the voice. It was her mother's. Dead 2 years. "Erin," the voice said. "Please open the door." She shook her head. Tears ran down her face. More knocks, louder now, flesh slamming into wood. "You're my daughter," the voice said. "You're supposed to help me." Erin backed into the corner of the room. She didn't open the door. Eventually, the knocks stopped. In the morning, the hallway looked different, longer. The wallpaper was darker, the windows were gone. She descended the stairs, but the lobby was empty, the front desk deserted. The door she'd come through was now a brick wall. She ran her hands along it. Solid, cold. Behind her, the lobby's grandfather clock chimed 13 times. A voice behind her said, "You stayed." She turned. It was the man from the front desk. Only now, he was taller. His suit fit. His eyes were completely black. "You read the note," he said. "You followed the rule." "What is this place?" she asked. "Bellwether is many things," he said. "A test, a gate, a promise." He walked behind the desk and opened a ledger. "You may check out." Erin hesitated. "What happens if I stay another night?" He looked up, smiled. His teeth were all the same size. "No one stays twice." She checked out, walked through a door that wasn't there before. It led her into a field of tall grass. No inn behind her, no road, just sky, clouds, wind, and in the distance, a house she recognized, her grandmother's house. Even though it had burned down years ago, the front door was open, a child's laughter echoed inside, and a shadow passed through the window, grinning. The rain hadn't stopped since they crossed the state line. Emma gripped the steering wheel and squinted through the windshield, wipers dragging across the glass in tired, screeching arcs. Josh sat in the passenger seat, feet up on the dash, watching the GPS spiral. "It says we're here," he said, tilting the phone. "But I don't see anything." Emma slowed to a crawl. The road was barely a road anymore, just a gravel path swallowed by trees, the headlights swallowed by fog. Finally, As they rounded a bend, a house emerged from the dark like a half-remembered dream. 3 stories tall, narrow, and leaning slightly to one side, the house stood surrounded by pine. One flickering porch light was the only sign of life. Peeling paint clung to the wood siding like wet skin. "This can't be it," Emma said. "It looks condemned." Josh opened the app. Address matches. Historic forest side retreat. Rustic charm. Private acreage. 5 stars. She pulled in beside a rusted swing set, the car tires crunching on gravel. "Charming," she muttered. They'd booked it for a weekend getaway. No crowds, no city noise, no deadlines. Just the two of them, woods, and silence. It had seemed perfect. Too perfect, maybe. Josh grabbed their bags. "Let's check it out." Emma hesitated, staring at the black windows. They looked like eyes. Inside, the air smelled like mothballs and rain-dampened wood. The living room was full of antique furniture, a floral wallpaper, and crooked picture frames of people long dead. A fireplace sat cold at the far end, its bricks black with soot. "Creepy but cozy," Josh said, dropping the bags. "I like it." The house groaned overhead. "Old pipes?" Emma asked. Josh smiled. "Old ghosts." They picked the master bedroom on the second floor. The bed was massive, the mattress surprisingly soft, and the view looked out into a thicket of trees so dense the moonlight barely touched the ground. By midnight, they were curled under the heavy quilt, the storm still tapping at the window panes. Then came the footsteps, soft, deliberate, above them. Emma sat up. "You heard that?" Josh paused. "Probably the house settling." The steps came again, across the ceiling. "Settling doesn't pace," she whispered. Josh stood, opened the bedroom door, and stepped into the hall. Emma followed. The upstairs was silent. Shadows stretched long and crooked across the floor. They crept up the narrow stairs to the attic door. Locked. Emma turned to go. Josh didn't. He pressed his ear to the door. "I hear breathing." "Stop it. I'm serious." The house moaned again. They went back to bed, both pretending to fall asleep. The next morning, Josh was already downstairs. Emma descended the stairs, rubbing her eyes, and paused. The front door was wide open. "Josh?" He came out of the kitchen, holding a coffee mug. "I didn't open it," he said before she asked. They checked the locks. Deadbolt was untouched. No footprints outside, just pine needles scattered across the floor. They spent the day hiking trails that looped endlessly through the woods. No birds, no animals, just quiet like the forest was holding its breath. That night, the attic door was open, just a crack. Josh stared at it from the hallway. "We didn't unlock it," he said. "Maybe it was never locked," Emma offered, voice thin. They didn't go inside. But neither of them could sleep. Around 3 a.m., the bedroom door creaked open. Emma froze. She hadn't locked it. A shape stood in the doorway. Not a person. Something too tall, shoulders grazing the frame, head tilted too far to one side. It swayed. Emma reached for Josh. Gone. The shape stepped forward. She scrambled backward, heart slamming in her chest, and it was gone. She woke up on the floor just before sunrise. The bedroom was empty. Josh's side of the bed untouched. His shoes were still by the door, his bag still zipped, but he was gone. She searched the house, screaming his name. Nothing. No answer. No footprints outside. The car still parked in the driveway, keys in the ignition. She called the police. No signal. Called the Airbnb number. Disconnected. By noon, she packed everything, ready to leave. But the road was gone. Where the gravel path had been was now a wall of trees. No tire tracks. No openings. She turned back to the house. The front door was closed. She hadn't touched it. She tried to sleep in the living room that night, the fireplace casting faint orange light on the walls. Every creak of the house made her flinch. Just after midnight, the old radio on the shelf turned on. Static. Then a voice. Faint. Familiar. She backed away. "Come upstairs." It was Josh. She grabbed the flashlight and headed to the stairs. The attic door was open now, yawning like a mouth. She climbed slowly. The attic was empty. Dust and broken furniture, and a mirror. Large. Ornate. Leaning against the far wall. It didn't show her reflection. Just the bedroom. Josh was in it, asleep. She reached toward the glass and the reflection blinked. She screamed. Ran. The attic door slammed behind her. For the rest of the night, she stayed locked in the car. At sunrise, the road was back. She drove until the trees broke open and signal bars returned. She called the police. They searched the house. Nothing. No sign of Josh, no attic mirror, no open door. The owner claimed no one had booked the property for over a year. The listing vanished that night. Months later, Emma received a package. No return address. Inside was a photo of her and Josh standing in front of the Bellhurst Airbnb. Only she had never seen that house before, and she was smiling. But Josh's eyes were gone. Just empty, black sockets staring out from the glossy paper. She checked the back, one word written in red ink. Come back? The morning air was sharp with cold as Darren zipped up his jacket and looked toward the trailhead. The sign was barely legible, half rotted and streaked with moss, but the word Ash Hollow Trail still clung to it, faded and scratched into the wood like a warning. He checked his pack, water, food, compass, flashlight, knife, and slung it over his shoulder. This wasn't his first hike. He'd done a dozen weekend treks across state parks and forest routes, but something about this trail had pulled him in when he saw it listed on an old hiker's forum. No maps, no clear location, just coordinates and a few comments that read like half jokes. It's there if it wants to be. Ash Hollow doesn't loop. It swallows. Brings something to leave behind. He figured it was just urban legend, the kind of spooky lore outdoorsy types passed around to scare rookies. But the photos showed something different. Weathered, stone arches, trees that twisted together like veins, a creek that ran dark even in daylight. He wanted to see it for himself. The trail opened with steep switchbacks, dirt turning soft underfoot from the morning dew. Birds chirped. A squirrel darted across the path. It felt like any other forest at first. Peaceful, remote, clean. He breathed in the scent of pine and damp leaves, the quiet rustle of wind through branches. 2 miles in, the trail narrowed. Trees grew closer together. The canopy thickened, blotting out the sun in patches. Darren's GPS pinged once, then lost signal. His compass needle twitched for a second before settling again. He didn't think much of it. At the 3-mile mark, the creek appeared. It was just as dark as the pictures. So dark it looked like oil. No fish, no algae, just a steady flow, silent and glossy, slipping over smooth stones that gleamed faintly, like they'd been polished. A small wooden bridge spanned the water. The planks sagged under his boots as he crossed. On the other side, the forest changed. The trees were taller here. Wrong, somehow. Narrower, their bark gray instead of brown. Their branches stretched upward in long, claw-like spirals, and their leaves barely moved in the breeze. There was no birdsong, no insects, no animal trails, just the sound of his own footfalls and breath. He kept walking. By the 5th mile, he noticed the signs, not trail markers. These were older, carved into the trees. Symbols. A spiral, a crooked eye, a shape like an open mouth. At first, he thought it was graffiti. Then he realized they were always facing the same direction, toward him. His stomach tightened, but he pressed on. He told himself he'd go to mile 7 and turn back. The terrain dipped into a hollow, the trail descending between mossy boulders and brambles. He ducked under a low arch made of twisted tree limbs. As he stepped through, his ears popped like a shift in pressure. The woods were silent now, not quiet. Silent, no wind, no rustling leaves, not even the crunch of his boots. He paused, lifted one foot, set it down, no sound. He turned around. The arch was gone, no branches, no bend in the trail. Just trees, endless and still. He spun in a slow circle, chest tightening. The trail was still beneath him, a thin thread of worn earth. But the forest around it had changed, darker now, denser, like it had pulled in close while he wasn't looking. He turned back toward where he thought he'd been heading and walked faster. Then he saw the first thing that didn't belong. A boot, half buried in the dirt at the base of a tree, the leather cracked and dry. A faded red shoelace. He leaned down, brushed the dirt away. There was a sock still inside it, and bones. Thin, gray bones like twigs. Not animal. He staggered back. Something snapped behind him. He spun, flashlight in hand. Nothing. The trees didn't move. The forest stayed still. And yet, the trail was different. It was narrower now. The ground sloped subtly to the left, though the forest floor appeared level. He walked, slowly now, counting each breath. 10 minutes. 15. The sky never changed. Always dim, always gray, like dusk had settled hours early. He tried to check his watch. The screen was black. Dead. So was the flashlight. He kept walking anyway. Then he heard it. A footstep behind him. He stopped. Silence. He moved again. Another step. Just a beat after his own. He turned and shouted, "Is someone there?" Silence. Then something spoke, not with words, with breath. Right against his ear, a sound like someone inhaling sharply through their teeth. He ran, twisting through the woods, off trail, branches slapping his face and arms. No direction, no plan, just away. He crashed through underbrush, fell, got up again, pushed on until the trees opened into a small clearing. At its center was a stone circle. 7 large stones, each carved with the same symbols he'd seen on the trees. In the middle, a pile of old gear, backpacks, sleeping bags, jackets, all molded and rotting. He stepped closer, heart hammering. There was a camera. He picked it up. Mud-caked but intact, he turned it on. The screen flickered, then loaded. One video file. He played it. The image was dark, shaky, someone running through the woods. Heavy breathing, whispers, then the camera swung towards something in the trees. Just a glimpse. A face. Too white, too wide, eyes black and unblinking, then static. Darren dropped the camera. He turned and the trail was back, but not the one he came from. This one was too straight, too smooth. The trees flanked it like guards. It led in only one direction. He followed. He walked for what felt like hours. The trees never changed. The light never shifted. No hunger, no thirst, just endless movement. Time didn't pass here. It circled, looped. Eventually he reached the arch again. The same twisted limbs, the same moss. He ducked under, and his ears popped. Birdsong, a breeze, sunlight. He stumbled forward, gasping. The original trailhead appeared ahead, framed by normal trees, the sound of cars faint in the distance. He ran. The forest didn't stop him, not this time. Back at his car, Darren sat for a long time with the door open, staring at the woods. He checked his phone. 2 days had passed. He had no memory of sleeping, no memory of stopping. His body ached, but he felt no hunger, no thirst. He checked the GPS. It worked. He drove, didn't look back. A week later, he returned with police. There was no trailhead, no sign, no path, just trees and overgrowth. They told him it didn't exist. They said he was lucky he wasn't hurt. He didn't argue. But that night, when he unpacked his bag, he found something he hadn't brought in with him. A red shoelace, tied in a knot, still wet. The Dead Air broadcast came on at 1:11 a.m. every Thursday. No intro, no ads, just a burst of static and then the host's voice, low, warm, and slightly cracked like old vinyl. "Welcome back," he'd say. "You're listening to Dead Air. I'm your host, Hal, and tonight, we're taking calls." It didn't appear on any official schedule. No FM frequency listed it, no podcast archives. You couldn't Shazam the eerie jazz that played between segments. Most people stumbled onto it late at night while twisting the dial, half asleep and alone. I found it in college. Insomnia and too much caffeine kept me up most nights, and one evening, somewhere between a scratchy country station and silence, I heard it. "You're listening to Dead Air." I should have turned it off. I didn't. That first night, Hal told a story. Soft-spoken, unhurried. A woman in Iowa whose child was born with no shadow. A man in Arizona who could see other people's dreams in puddles. A radio technician in Vermont who transmitted from a tower that didn't exist. The story was broken up by static, flickering between monologue and silence, as if the signal passed through another place before reaching me. Then came the phone calls. "Line 1, Hal would say, "Tell us your story." The voices were always strange, half-whispered confessions, people claiming to be dead. A woman describing a man who stood at the foot of her bed each night, who wore her father's face, but whose feet never touched the ground. I was hooked. Every Thursday, I tuned in. After a few weeks, I started recording the shows. No file would save. Each attempt, MP3, wave, analog tape, vanished after sunrise, either corrupted or missing entirely. But the strangest thing was, no one else ever heard of it. I asked classmates, professors, even local radio hobbyists. Dead Air? Never heard of it. Even online, there was nothing. No forum posts, no Reddit threads. Just one blog from 2006. If you're listening to Dead Air, you've already been marked. Turn it off. Don't call. Don't look in the mirror during the broadcast. I thought it was just a creepypasta, until the mirror thing happened. It was around 1:40 a.m., midway through a story about a signal that only played when someone in the house was dying. This dying, I glanced up at the mirror on my closet door. The reflection didn't match. In the glass, I was smiling. I wasn't smiling. I jumped up, heart hammering, and turned the mirror around to face the wall. From the radio, Hal chuckled. "Some of you are starting to see." I stopped listening for a while, burned the mirror, moved to a new apartment. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me, the sound of static in my ears while walking home. seeing radios flicker on when I passed thrift shops, waking up to my alarm clock tuned to static, even though I never set it to radio. Then, last Thursday, I got a letter in the mail. No stamp, just my name, handwritten in red ink. Inside was a single cassette tape, no label. I didn't want to play it. I did anyway. It started with silence, then Hal's voice. "Welcome back. This broadcast is for a very special listener. You know who you are." I froze. "This story," he continued, "is about a boy who listened too long, who thought stories weren't real, who thought he could record the signal and escape the consequences." A pause. He was wrong. Then came static. Then came me. I heard my voice from weeks ago, laughing, asking questions out loud as I listened to the show. It was a recording of me, things I'd never said into a mic. Then another voice joined mine. Lower, wet, like something trying to speak through lungs full of water. "You're next." The tape clicked off. I sat in silence for hours, staring at the player. By dawn, it was gone. No tape, no envelope, no trace. I unplugged every radio in the apartment, but that night the static came from inside the walls. I don't mean that metaphorically. It literally hummed from the drywall. I put my ear against it, heard whispers, faint, repeating, "Dead air, dead air, dead air." I packed a bag and left. Checked into a motel 3 towns over. The bedside clock clicked to 1:11 a.m. The TV turned itself on. Channel 3, static. Then Hal's voice, "You can't run from a signal." Last night, I gave in. I drove into the woods where cell signal dies and radios hiss like angry animals. I brought an old ham radio, connected it to my car's battery, and sat in the dark. At exactly 1:11 a.m., the signal came in clear. "Welcome back to Dead Air." I spoke aloud. "What do you want from me?" Hal answered. "You were chosen to carry the broadcast forward. Every generation needs a voice. I'm not doing this, but you already are." The trees around me shivered, though there was no wind. Hal kept speaking. "One last story," he said. "Then the mic is yours." I woke up at dawn in the driver's seat. Radio melted, wires fused. On the passenger seat, a microphone, attached to nothing. Still warm. A note beneath it. "Thursday, 1:11 a.m. your turn." So now I sit here, hands shaking, watching the clock tick toward that moment. I boarded the windows, disconnected everything. And yet, the radio is glowing. A mic sits in front of me, and outside, just barely audible above the wind, I hear them calling. Voices. Dozens of them, waiting. And when the clock strikes 1:11, I'll speak. The Red Room. I found the website by accident. It was buried on an old forum, one of those half-dead threads from the early 2000s with pixelated avatars and usernames like Neon Ghost and Shadowman42. The post was simple: "Whatever you do, don't click the Red Room link after midnight." It included a link, of course. A dead one. Except it wasn't. The first time I clicked it, nothing happened. Just a black screen with a blinking red dot in the center. No text, no back button, no way to close the tab. I had to restart my laptop to get out of it. I thought it was a prank, until it came back. The next morning, when I opened my browser, the Red Room was there again. The same black background, the same red dot. Only this time, there was a message. "You were warned." I tried to delete my history, clear the cache, run antivirus. Nothing worked. The Red Room kept opening on its own. Every day, it stayed up a little longer. The dot got bigger, brighter, like it was pulsing, like it was alive. At night, I started hearing whispers, not from the screen, from inside the room, from the walls. I lived alone. At first, I thought it was in my head, just anxiety from lack of sleep. But then the light bulbs started blowing out one by one, and my mirrors began to fog over without steam. And in that fog, I saw shapes standing behind me, watching, always watching. I stopped using my laptop, bought a new one. Didn't matter. The Red Room came back, always midnight, always silent, until the 5th night. That's when the dot vanished and a door appeared, red, slightly ajar, a soft glow leaking out like candlelight, and then the message, "Enter?" I closed the lid, unplugged it, took the battery out, and still at 12:01 I woke to find the glow from the laptop filling my room. The screen open, the door wider, waiting. I called my friend Malik, told him everything. He laughed at first, then offered to stay the night, said we'd burn the thing if it helped. That evening, we drank, played cards, talked about anything else, until midnight. When the laptop turned itself on, the glow filled the room, the Red Room opened. We stared, neither of us spoke. Then Malik leaned closer. "What's that?" On the screen, a figure was walking through the red-lit hallway. Small, distant, getting closer and closer, until it was standing right in front of the camera. Face pale and flickering, eyes black, smile wide and wrong. Malik slammed the lid shut and the lights went out. All of them. The apartment was silent. Then, tap, tap, tap. On the front door, Malik turned toward it, but I stopped him. "Don't," I whispered. The tapping continued. Then a new sound. Typing. From the laptop, I opened it slowly. The red room was still there, but the figure was gone. In its place, a blinking cursor beneath a new message. "You brought him." We didn't sleep. When the sun rose, Malik left, said he didn't feel right. I never saw him again. His number went dead. His apartment was empty. Vanished, like he'd never existed. I tried destroying the laptop, took a hammer to it, smashed the screen, bent the casing until sparks flew out. The next night, it was back on my desk, fully intact. The door opened wider than ever. Inside, I could see movement, shadows pacing, clawing at the walls. The whispers returned. They never stopped, even during the day. Always saying the same thing, "It's your turn." I moved. Different city, changed my name, threw the laptop in a river. I thought it was over. But tonight, as I write this, my new phone just lit up. I didn't touch it. There's a notification. A website is opened in the browser. Black background, red dot, blinking, and the words, "The Red Room never closes." The man in the yellow hoodie. It started on a Monday, the same way most terrible things do, quietly. I noticed him outside my apartment building, standing by the newspaper box. He wasn't doing anything strange, not really. Just leaning, looking at his phone, a yellow hoodie pulled over his head. It caught my attention because he didn't move. Not for 10 minutes, not even to check his phone again or shift his weight. Just stood. I went inside and locked the door. Didn't think about it again until the next morning. He was there again. Same spot, same hoodie, same stillness. This time, he turned his head as I walked by. I didn't see his face, just the hint of stubble, the curve of a grin too wide to be casual. I hurried inside. By Wednesday, I was checking out the window before I left. He was always there, always watching. By Friday, I was changing my routine, taking the back stairwell, pretending to be on calls, skipping the walk to the coffee shop. It didn't help. The man in the yellow hoodie was still there. And now he was waving. I called the police. They sent someone out, but by the time the officer arrived, the man was gone. "Probably just someone waiting for a ride," she said, unconvinced. I asked about getting security footage. She shrugged. "You'd need to talk to the landlord. Still, if he hasn't done anything illegal, there's not much we can do." That night, I didn't sleep. I thought I heard footsteps outside my door. The soft squeak of sneakers on tile, a rustling sound, fabric brushing against the wall. I held my breath and waited, but it stopped. The next morning, I found a yellow thread wedged in the gap between the door and the frame, like a warning or a souvenir. I started getting the texts a few days later. Unknown number, no name, no profile photo, just messages like, "You look nice today. Why did you change your route? I miss your morning smile." I blocked the number. Another one messaged the next day, then another, all saying the same thing, "Don't ignore me." I stopped leaving the apartment, started working remotely, kept the curtains drawn. I even taped over my laptop camera and unplugged the smart speaker. But one night I forgot to lock the balcony. I heard the sound of shoes scraping against metal. I ran to the window. The man in the yellow hoodie was standing on the fire escape, inches from the glass. Smiling, I screamed. He vanished. By the time police arrived, he was long gone. No fingerprints, no damage, no proof he was ever there. But on the inside of the glass, in the fog of his breath, he'd drawn a heart. The fear became routine. I checked the locks 10 times a night, slept with a knife under my pillow, jumped at every noise. But days passed, then a week. No texts, no sightings, no sign of him. I began to relax, thought maybe he'd moved on, maybe he'd found someone else to follow. I started going out again, met friends, slept through the night, even deleted the security app I'd been using obsessively until the package arrived. No return address. Inside, a yellow hoodie neatly folded and a note that read, "Try it on. Let's match." I left town that night. Drove 6 hours to stay with my cousin in the countryside. Didn't tell anyone where I was going. No social media, No calls, no texts, just disappeared. It was quiet for 2 weeks. I started to believe I was safe. Then on the 15th night, my cousin asked, "Hey, is your friend staying over too?" I froze. What friend? The guy in the yellow hoodie. I saw him by the barn this morning. We called the police. They searched the property, found nothing. But that night, I found muddy footprints under my bedroom window. I moved again. Different state, different name. I told myself I'd never feel safe again, but maybe I could feel hidden. That was 6 months ago. I haven't seen him since. Not directly, but sometimes I spot flashes of yellow in crowds, reflections in windows that vanish when I turn. I keep my doors locked. I sleep with the camera pointed at my bed. I don't go out after dark. But tonight, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, no stamp, just a single sheet of paper that read, "I've missed you. See you soon." Outside, a man in a yellow hoodie just walked past my window. He's smiling. The third floor of the Amberlight Motel was supposed to be closed. That's what the manager told me when I checked in. He was a heavy-set man with thinning hair and a look in his eyes like he hadn't slept properly in a decade. He handed me the key to room 210 and warned, "Don't go up to the third floor. Power's out up there. Whole level's shut down." I wasn't planning on it. I was just passing through town one night on the road, trying to get some distance between myself and the city where everything went wrong. I didn't need much, just a bed, a lock on the door, and something stronger than tap water in my cup. The first night was quiet until 3:13 a.m. I woke to footsteps above me. Slow, heavy, deliberate. I sat up in bed, confused. I remembered what the manager said. There wasn't supposed to be anyone above me. And yet the footsteps continued, pacing back and forth across the ceiling. Then I heard dragging, like something heavy was being pulled across the floor. I tried to go back to sleep, but it was impossible. The next morning, I mentioned it at the front desk. The manager looked up from his paper, grimaced. "Room 313, he muttered, then caught himself and shook his head. "Never mind. It's just old plumbing. Pipes knock at night." Those weren't pipes. I knew that sound. It had rhythm. It had weight. It was someone walking. The second night, I stayed up. I sat in the dark, TV off, watching the ceiling. Sure enough, at exactly 3:13 a.m., the footsteps began. But this time they didn't just pace. They stopped right above me, and then knock, knock, knock. 3 slow knocks from the ceiling. I didn't move, didn't breathe. And from the silence that followed, I could hear breathing, not mine. Someone else's. Shallow, wet, right above me. The next morning, I asked the maid if anyone had a key to room 313. She looked startled. "That room's sealed. Hasn't been opened in years." "Why?" She hesitated. "Some girl, long time ago. She rented it for one night. They found her in the bathtub the next morning. Said she'd clawed at the walls so hard her fingers broke. No sign of anyone else being there, but they closed the floor after that." "What was her name?" The maid looked away. "Doesn't matter. She's not the one knocking." That night, I made the mistake of going upstairs. I don't know what drove me. Curiosity, maybe. Maybe something worse. But around midnight, I crept past the front desk, up the stairwell, and onto the third floor. The hallway lights were out. The carpet smelled like mildew and dust. All the doors were shut, except one. Room 313. It was open a crack, a sliver of dark beyond, and a faint whisper, "Come in." I should have left, run back to my room, packed my bags, and never looked back. But I pushed the door open. Inside, the room was in perfect condition. Bed made, lamp on, mirror polished. But the air was cold, wrong cold, the kind that sinks into your teeth and makes your bones ache. I stepped inside. The door shut behind me. I spun, heart racing, but no one was there. The window was nailed shut, the bathroom door slightly ajar, and from within, the sound of water dripping. I reached out, opened the door, and saw the tub full of dark water. Something floated in it. Hair, pale skin, eyes open and staring up at me. I stumbled back, hit the wall, the lights flickered, the body in the tub sat up, water spilling onto the floor. She pointed at me with broken fingers. "You're in my room." I ran. Didn't stop until I was back in my bed, heart racing, covers pulled to my chin like a child hiding from a nightmare. But I wasn't asleep, and the nightmare wasn't over, because at 3:13 a.m. I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. Only this time, it came from my door. I left at sunrise. Didn't bother checking out, just drove until the motel was miles behind me. But I keep hearing the knocks, different places now. Hotel rooms, friends' guest rooms, even in my apartment. Always at 3:13 a.m., always 3 knocks, and sometimes when I open the door, there's water on the floor. Echoes from the deep. Lena had always been afraid of the ocean. Even as a kid, she avoided beaches, aquariums, even deep bathtubs. She didn't like not knowing what was beneath her. That vast blackness, cold and ancient, hiding things with too many teeth. Her friends teased her for it. Her family called it irrational. But she knew. She knew something waited down there. So when she took the research internship on the Oceanus Deep Sea Observation Platform, it was supposed to be an act of defiance, a way to prove she wasn't afraid anymore. She told herself she was just facing a fear, exposing the ghost in the dark so it could finally disappear. But it didn't disappear. It woke up. The Oceanus platform floated 50 miles off the coast. It was a strange, skeletal thing, an abandoned oil rig retrofitted with labs and living quarters, perched on steel legs that plunged straight into the abyss. Only 6 people lived on board at any time, a rotating staff of scientists, divers, and technicians. Lena was one of the youngest, still in university, still pretending not to be afraid. The first week was uneventful. She cataloged sonar readings, logged deep-sea audio feeds, ran corrosion tests on steel samples, but every night she would lie awake and listen, because the rig hummed, not the kind of hum you'd expect from generators or wind. This was low, resonant, alive, like something enormous was groaning beneath them, straining upward. The others didn't talk about it, but Lena saw it in their eyes. They all heard it, and they were all pretending not to. On day 8, the dive team brought something back. They weren't supposed to bring back anything. The mission was observation only, non-intrusive. The ocean was too unpredictable, and there were regulations about deep-sea disturbance. But Dr. Morrow, the lead biologist, had insisted. They'd found it on a shelf 11,000 feet below the rig. A black stone, or at least it looked like stone, smooth, egg-shaped, with faint ridges like gills running along its surface. It pulsed faintly when touched, like it had a heartbeat. They placed it in a reinforced tank in the observation bay, locked it up, monitored it. The humming grew louder that night, and Lena dreamed of drowning. Only it wasn't water that filled her lungs. It was voices. By day 10, the crew started acting strangely. One technician stopped eating, just sat by the tank, staring at the black object, whispering to it. Another began pacing the halls at night, eyes wide, fingers twitching, muttering fragments of languages Lena didn't recognize. Morrow refused to acknowledge anything was wrong. He was obsessed, said the object was alive, maybe ancient, maybe extraterrestrial. It was the discovery of a lifetime, and he wouldn't let fear ruin it. But Lena wasn't afraid of the object. She was afraid of the ocean around it, because the sonar was picking up something huge beneath the rig, something that hadn't been there before, something that moved when the stone pulsed. Day 13. The communications array failed. No messages in or out. The supply vessel due to arrive didn't show. The wind picked up, the sea swelled, and the object cracked. Not shattered, hatched. The shell fell away in pieces, revealing a mass of tendrils, thin and translucent, like jellyfish limbs tangled around a central eye that didn't blink. It just stared. Dr. Morrow tried to touch it. The glass of the tank shattered, and the creature vanished. They searched the entire rig, found nothing, except a trail of salt water leading back to the central shaft, the one that descended straight into the deep. Lena begged them to leave it, seal it off, wait for help. But Morrow was already climbing down. 3 others followed him. Only one came back. She didn't speak, just sat in the galley, eyes staring into a corner no one else could see, lips moving in a silent conversation with something beneath the floor. That night, Lena heard it again, the hum. Now, a chorus, and something brushing the underside of the rig, like a hand or a fin, or both. Day 15. Only 3 of them left. The woman from the shaft jumped overboard during breakfast, didn't scream, didn't hesitate, just walked off the edge into the waves. Lena ran to the comms room and smashed the emergency beacon, hoping the failsafe still worked. The platform shuddered. Somewhere far below, metal groaned and tore. The lights flickered, and the humming became a song. Something was rising. She ran to the observation deck. Far beneath the waves, a shape twisted and turned. It was impossible to gauge its size, too big to be real. Its skin rippled like liquid shadow. Eyes blinked open, dozens at once, glowing with a pale, hungry light. And from its back, hundreds of tendrils reached up like arms. One of them touched the platform, and everything went dark. Lena doesn't remember how she survived. The rescue vessel found her days later, adrift on a section of torn decking, alone, rambling about the deep and the song and the egg that was not an egg. They said the Oceanus platform sank. No survivors, no debris, no explanation. They never found the object. And Lena never spoke again, but every night she dreams of the hum, of eyes watching from beneath the waves, of something ancient and patient, still rising, waiting for the next door to open. The reflection room. The hospital was never supposed to be that quiet. Even at night, there should have been the buzz of fluorescence, the steady beeping of machines, nurses shuffling down linoleum floors, murmurs behind curtains. But when I arrived at Old Briar General, it was silent. I was there to photograph the abandoned structure for an architectural archive. The hospital had been shut down for nearly a decade. Budget cuts and rumors of malpractice, and it was scheduled for demolition at the end of the month. My job was to document what was left before the wrecking crew came through. The security guard on duty was half asleep and didn't seem to care what I did as long as I signed in and left before dawn. He handed me a flashlight, a worn map of the facility, and pointed down the west wing. "Stay out of the reflection room," he muttered, not looking up. I paused. "What's that?" "Just don't go in there." Then he turned the volume up on his little TV and said nothing more. The hospital was a maze. Rooms still held rusted beds. Wheelchairs stood abandoned in corners. Faded signs with flaking letters pointed toward radiology, surgery, maternity. Every step echoed too loud, like the walls were listening. I took photos in silence. The camera worked fine in the upper floors, but when I descended to the basement, where the psych ward used to be, the flash flickered and died. My flashlight began to dim, even though I'd checked the batteries twice. I told myself it was fine, just old wiring, old batteries. Nothing strange, nothing wrong. I found the reflection room by accident. There was no label on the door, just a warped wooden plaque with the number B100T etched faintly into it. The door was different from the others, thicker with a black, glassy sheen where a window used to be. I shouldn't have gone in, but I'd already pushed the door open before I realized where I was. The room was empty. No bed, no machines, just walls covered entirely in mirrors. Not decorative ones, institutional. The kind you find in interrogation rooms, stretched wall to wall, aged with streaks and fingerprints, floor to ceiling, all four sides. And in every mirror, I saw myself, except I didn't. Because in one of them, I didn't blink. The real me blinked. The reflection didn't. I froze. The light above buzzed, then popped. Everything went black, except the mirrors. They glowed faintly, and all of my reflections were still staring, but only one was smiling. I ran, tripped over the threshold, and scrambled up the basement stairs, heart pounding. When I reached the main level, the lights were fine again. The hum of the building returned. But something had changed. Every mirror I passed, from bathroom sinks to old patient rooms, reflected things wrong. A delay, a smirk, a tilt of the head that didn't match mine. I covered the lens of my camera, didn't take another photo, didn't want to see what it might capture. Back at home, I deleted the reflection room photos, but they came back. Every time I opened the folder, they were there. A dozen shots I hadn't taken, me standing in the center of the mirrored room, surrounded by smiling copies. Each photo slightly different. In one, my eyes were missing. In another, my hands were pressed flat against the glass, blood smearing from torn fingertips. In the last, my reflection was facing away, walking deeper into a hallway that didn't exist. I deleted them again. They returned. I smashed the camera. It didn't help. That night, I covered all the mirrors in my apartment. Blankets, towels, anything I could find, even the TV screen. But around 3 a.m., I woke to a faint sound. Glass tapping. Tap, tap, tap. I turned on the light. The sheet over my bedroom mirror had fallen, and in the reflection, I wasn't alone. My double stood behind me, same hair, same face, but smiling too wide, and its fingers were tapping the inside of the mirror. I turned, no one there, but in the reflection, it raised its hand and waved. I moved out the next day, stayed in motels, slept under dim lights, avoided mirrors at all costs, but they found me anyway in the chrome of faucets and elevator doors, in the eyes of strangers that looked too familiar. I saw myself, always smiling, always watching, sometimes mouthing words I couldn't hear, sometimes pressing a hand to the glass, inviting me back. I don't sleep much now, and when I do, I dream of B-113. I dream of mirrors that lead to somewhere else. Somewhere I'm still trapped, because I think the me that walked out of that hospital isn't me at all. And the real me, he's still in the reflection room, waiting for someone else to take his place. Whispers in the static. When my grandfather died, he left behind a farmhouse deep in the hills of Vermont. The kind of place that looks like it's held together by memory and rot. Slanted porch, moss-covered roof, and furniture older than most small countries. I inherited it because no one else wanted it. My mother hadn't spoken to him in 20 years, and the rest of the family pretended he didn't exist. Still, I went. I needed space, silence, and a break from the chaos of the city. I should have stayed in the chaos, because the farmhouse wasn't empty, and the silence was never really silence. The first few days were uneventful. The plumbing moaned, the wind howled through cracks, and the old floorboards creaked under every step like they were complaining about being disturbed. I explored the attic, found boxes of dusty war medals, yellowing photographs, and a stack of VHS tapes marked only with dates. But what caught my attention was the radio. It sat in the kitchen, bulky, old-fashioned, the kind with knobs and an analog tuner. A thick cord connected it to the wall, and when I plugged it in out of curiosity, it clicked to life with a low hum. No music, no talk shows, just static. I turned the dial slowly, passing nothing but white noise until... click. A voice. Not a station, not a broadcast. A single voice whispering from beneath the static. You can hear me now. I unplugged the radio immediately, but the voice didn't stop. That night, I heard the static again, faint, drifting up the stairs. The radio wasn't plugged in. I went down, flashlight in hand, and found the radio on. The cord still lay limp on the floor. No power, no batteries, just static, and underneath it, a voice humming. Low, off-key, familiar, my grandfather's favorite song. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, I took the radio outside and buried it behind the barn, 6 feet deep, just in case. By afternoon, it was back in the kitchen, covered in dirt, still humming, still whispering. I left the house, drove into town, asked the local mechanic if he knew anything about radios that worked without power. He looked at me long, then asked, "You staying out at the Brooks place?" I nodded, his face paled. "You hear it yet?" "Hear what?" He leaned in, voice low. "They say he built that radio to talk to his wife after she passed. Sat in that kitchen every night for years, just listening. Said she was in the static, said she answered." I laughed nervously. He didn't. "Don't stay too long," he said. "Some voices you don't want to hear." That night, the radio didn't whisper. It spoke, clear, cold, female. "Why did you leave me?" I backed away slowly. The air in the kitchen grew thick, like the house was holding its breath. "You promised." The lights flickered, then blew out. In the dark, I could still hear the radio, but it wasn't just one voice now. It was many, all whispering at once. "Stay. Stay." I ran upstairs and locked the door. But the whispering was inside my head now, beneath the floor, inside the walls, in the static ringing in my ears. I found my grandfather's journal the next morning, hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the study. The last entries were frantic. "She's closer now. She won't let me leave. The voices aren't hers anymore. The static is a door." And the very last page, "If you hear them, it's too late." I packed my things and tried to leave. The car wouldn't start. The keys went missing. The roads out of town were suddenly closed for construction, signs I hadn't seen the day before. I was trapped, and the radio knew. That night, it said my name. "Elliot," over and over. "Elliot, come down." I stayed in bed, lights on, blanket pulled to my chin like a child hiding from a nightmare. But nightmares don't knock. and something was knocking. Soft, slow, from inside the closet. I opened it at dawn, empty, except for the radio, balanced neatly on a shelf, still humming, still whispering. I smashed it, threw it into the fireplace and lit it with lighter fluid, watched it burn to melted metal and black ash. Then I turned and saw 3 more radios on the kitchen table, all tuned to the same frequency, all whispering the same word: stay. I'm writing this from the attic now. The house won't let me leave. The whispers are louder than ever. Sometimes they sound like my grandfather. Sometimes they sound like my own voice. I haven't slept in days. The radios are multiplying. They've filled the house, one in every room, every drawer, every mirror. All whispering, all humming, all waiting. If you ever come to the Brooks farmhouse, don't plug anything in, don't tune the dial, don't listen to the static, because once you hear them, they never stop. The 5th door. It was a dare, like all the worst things in life. 5 of us snuck into the old Green Hollow Asylum just before midnight. My cousin Wes had a bolt cutter, 2 flashlights, and a 6-pack of flat beer that made him feel invincible. He was the one who first mentioned the 5th door. "You know the story," he said, grinning. 4 padded rooms in the basement, and 1 more that's locked shut. "There's always a 5th door," I muttered, trying to sound unimpressed. But my voice cracked. The rest of them, Jess, Marcus, and Talia, laughed nervously. We all knew the legend. Green Hollow Asylum was shut down in the 60s after a fire and a string of unexplained deaths. They said one of the doctors had gone mad and sealed a patient inside a room that didn't exist on any blueprint. Staff who got too close heard knocking, screaming. Some say one nurse opened the door and never came back out. The state closed the facility, and no one ever reopened it. But the 5th door remained. We shouldn't have gone looking for it. The inside of Green Hollow was rotten with time. Peeling paint, waterlogged ceilings, and graffiti tags from braver idiots than us. The floor tiles crunched under our shoes. The air smelled like mildew, dust, and something sour underneath it all, like old meat left too long in the sun. "This place is cursed," Jess whispered, and I didn't laugh. It took us nearly an hour to find the stairs down to the basement. Every turn was a dead end, every corridor darker than the last. The power, obviously, had been cut for decades. We moved by flashlight, cones of pale light flickering as the batteries strained. Then Wes found the padded cells. The first 4 doors were just like the stories, heavy, rusted steel with tiny square windows. Most of the padding inside was ripped and black with mold. On the 3rd door, someone had scratched "help" into the padding with what looked like fingernails. But there was no 5th door. Not at first. "I swear it's here," Wes said, running his hands along the wall. "There's a hidden seam, like the wall is fake." Talia rolled her eyes. "Maybe the legend's just that, a legend." But then Marcus said, "Guys, look." In the far corner, the brickwork didn't match the rest of the foundation. It was smoother, seamless. Wes tapped it. Hollow. He grinned and pulled out the bolt cutter. One solid slam, and the wall cracked. Behind it, a black steel door stood waiting. No window, no handle, just a tiny keyhole. A handprint had been smeared across it in something long dried and dark brown. Jess backed away. "Nope, I'm done." Talia followed her. "We've seen it." "Great, let's go." But Wes reached into his coat and pulled out an old brass key. We stared at him. "You brought that?" "Found it online. Old collector brass said it was from Green Hollow. I figured if we found the door..." He didn't finish the sentence, just slid the key into the lock. It turned with a click, and the door opened. Inside was darkness. Not just the absence of light, a presence of dark. The kind that drinks your flashlight beams and throws them back cold and empty. I felt it immediately. Wrong. Heavy, like the room was holding its breath, waiting for someone to step inside. Wes didn't hesitate. He walked in first. Then Marcus, then me. The room was bare, concrete walls, no furniture, no light fixture, just a mirror. A single, full-length mirror mounted to the far wall. No dust, no cracks, perfectly clean. Our reflections stared back at us. Except they weren't us. My reflection didn't move when I did. Its eyes were just a little too wide. Its smile a little too sharp. I stepped to the side. It stayed still. Marcus reached forward to touch the glass. His reflection raised its hand too, but half a second too late. Then it smiled. and so did mine, and Wes's. All of them smiling, not in sync, not real. Wes stepped closer, entranced. Guys, they're trying to talk. The mirror shimmered like water, and his reflection moved through it. Wes didn't scream, he just vanished. The mirror rippled again, and where his reflection had been, something else stood. Still in his shape, still in his clothes, but not Wes. The eyes were black. The smile was wrong, and it reached out from the mirror, pressing fingers against the glass. I grabbed Marcus. We ran. The door slammed behind us, nearly catching my foot. The others screamed. Wes's voice came from behind the steel, low, muffled. "Let me out." Then it laughed, and we ran. We made it outside just before dawn. Jess was crying. Talia couldn't stop shaking. Marcus kept whispering. He looked like Wes, but it wasn't Wes. I didn't sleep for days. But eventually, life moved on. Sort of. Wes was declared missing. We never told anyone what happened. We couldn't explain it, but the worst part? Last night I heard a knock at my apartment door. I looked through the peephole, and Wes was standing there, smiling, holding a mirror. There's a stretch of land outside my hometown that no one plows anymore. Not since the summer of 1998. They call it the Smiling Field. You won't find it on maps. It's not labeled on any property surveys. You won't even notice it if you're driving by, just a slight dip off County Road 14 where the grass grows too tall and the wind dies before it reaches the fence line. But if you stop your car, if you roll down your window, you'll hear them. The laughter. Soft and low, like it's being swallowed by the dirt. My older brother Sam dared me to go in when I was 10. Back then, we didn't believe the stories. At least, not really. Every town has its own haunted hill, its own dead forest or devil's bridge. We thought it was just a myth, something the older kids made up to scare us. So we brought flashlights, granola bars, a BB gun, and we climbed the fence. The air changed immediately. It smelled like old pennies and wet earth. The sky looked the same, blue and cloudless, but the sun felt farther away, like it had dimmed somehow, like we were standing in a shadow no one else could see. Still, we laughed it off. We walked into the field. The grass was tall, almost chest height for me. We followed a narrow trail of trampled stalks winding deeper through the green. Sam led the way, holding the BB gun like it mattered. "Probably just deer paths," he said. We walked for 10 minutes, then 20. Then we heard it. Laughter. Not close, not loud, but wrong. Too smooth, too even. Like a recording played on loop. No breaths, no variation, no emotion. Just laughter. We stopped. Sam raised the gun. "It's probably a prank," he said, though his voice shook. The grass ahead of us moved, then parted, and a woman stepped into view. She was smiling. That was the first thing I noticed. Not a polite smile, not a friendly one. A wide, toothy grin that never touched her eyes. Her dress was white, soaked brown at the hem. Her feet were bare. She had long black hair that didn't move, even though there was wind now, wind that somehow only touched us. But her smile stayed, unbroken, unblinking. "I'm so glad you came," she said. Her voice was thick, slow, like it had to crawl out of her throat. Sam raised the BB gun. "We're leaving." "Are you?" she asked. The laughter returned, but it didn't come from her. It came from everywhere. The grass, the sky, the earth beneath our feet. I turned to run. The grass behind us was gone, replaced by a row of people, men, women, children, all smiling, all standing perfectly still, blocking the path, and behind them more emerged from the grass, from the air, from nowhere. Sam fired. The BB pinged off the woman's shoulder. She didn't react, didn't even blink. He grabbed my hand and ran sideways, away from the crowd, if through the grass that no longer felt like grass. It felt like fingers, grabbing, reaching, trying to pull us down. We stumbled, fell, got up again, ran until we couldn't hear the laughter, until we reached the fence. We climbed over and didn't look back. That was 27 years ago. Sam never talked about it, neither did I, until this morning when I got a call from Mom. She said Sam had gone missing, left town 2 weeks ago, said he had unfinished business, said he was heading to the field. I told her I'd find him. I'm sitting in my truck now, just off County Road 14. The sun is bright, the grass is tall, and the fence looks older than it should. I'm not 10 anymore, and I know what waits out there, but I can hear the laughter again, and it's louder now, because this time, they're expecting me. The light in the drain. It started with the storm. We get plenty of rain in Lockwood, but this one was different. Sheets of lightning that lit up the sky like a war zone, and thunder that shook dishes off the shelves. The streets flooded in minutes. Manholes overflowed. Sewers gurgled like something was trying to crawl out. I live in a cul-de-sac that backs up against the old ravine, right where the town's drainage system empties out. After the power went out, I lit candles and tried to pretend I wasn't creeped out by the sounds outside. Groaning pipes, wind howling through the chimney, and something else. Something faint, like whispering, coming from the bathtub drain. I live alone, no pets, no roommates. So when I heard that whisper, I assumed it was just the storm messing with my ears. White noise, static nerves. I leaned closer to the tub out of dumb curiosity, candlelight flickering on the tile. The whispering stopped, but then something blinked back at me. From inside the drain. Two pale, colorless eyes. Human, but not, and just below them, light. A soft, pulsing glow like a firefly caught in the plumbing. I jerked back so hard I hit the sink. Water bubbled up from the drain, thick and dark, like oil. It smelled like rot. The next day, I called a plumber. Didn't mention the eyes, just said the drain was backed up and smelled off. He poked around for 10 minutes before telling me the entire system was pressurized wrong. Said he'd never seen anything like it. Then he went quiet and asked if anyone else lived in the house. I said no. He frowned, walked back to the tub, and pointed. "Looks like hair," he said. I leaned closer. It wasn't hair, it was string. Wet, gray, and fibrous, like plant roots or veins, trailing down into the dark. He left 20 minutes later, visibly shaken, and told me, half joking, that I might want to call a priest instead. I didn't laugh, because that night, the whispering came back, and this time it knew my name. Elliot. It came up from the kitchen sink, from the bathroom drain, from the toilet, even from the gap under the dishwasher. Always the same voice, gentle, like a mother calling her child home. "Elliot, come down." I stuffed towels into the drains, taped over the sinks, didn't shower, didn't flush, but it wasn't enough, because the light was spreading. Tiny glowing veins crept from the kitchen drain, glowing a dull, sickly yellow. I followed them under the cabinets, into the walls, and out to the backyard. Straight to the storm drain at the bottom of the ravine. The metal grate had split open. The light spilled up from inside like fog, and something in the dark below whispered, louder now, "We've made room." I dreamt of water that night. Black and warm. Endless. I floated in it, limbs heavy, unable to move. Beneath me, a shape swam in circles, pale arms, long fingers, and a stitched mouth that opened wide without tearing. When I woke, my feet were wet, the bathtub had filled itself, and the drain was whispering again. Only this time, it wasn't just my name, it was everyone's. Voices layered over voices. Hundreds, thousands, calling out, crying, begging, and beneath them all, that one same promise, we made room. I tried to leave town, got maybe 15 miles before my engine cut out, tried another route. Flooded, every road out was blocked by construction or wreckage. Power lines down, trees snapped like matchsticks. And I realized then, no one else had left either, because no one else had noticed. Neighbors still walked dogs, went to work, watered lawns, even as the glow spread beneath their feet, even as the drains whispered. Even as the light crept out of the manholes at night and slithered up through vents and floorboards, it had already gotten inside, only I could hear it. And it wanted me back. I stayed awake for 2 days, barricaded in my bedroom. Then on the third night, the lights went out again. A final blackout, and the whispering stopped. Not faded, stopped. The silence was worse. I crept to the bathroom, candle in hand, and peeled away the towels covering the drain. It was gone, just blackness now. But deep in that silence, I heard water dripping, and then something else. A knock from inside the pipes. Tap, tap, tap. Then, "We made room for you, Elliot." The light blinked back on, so did the eyes, so did the smile, And the last thing I saw before the world went black was a hand, pale, wet, reaching up from the drain, inviting me home. The first time Leah had the nightmare, she woke up screaming. It was the kind of scream that didn't feel like her own, ripped from someplace deep, some primal cavity she didn't know existed. Her sheets were soaked, her throat raw, her nails bloodied from clawing at her own arms. She didn't remember the dream, just fragments, a long hallway, a door with no handle, a sound like bones clicking in rhythm, and a whisper, "You came back." Her roommate Rachel barged in, eyes wide. "Jesus, Leah, what the hell?" Leah sat upright, staring at the dark corner of the room. "I was dreaming," she said, but something about that corner made her uneasy, as if it had just stopped moving. The nightmares came again the next night. This time, she remembered more. She was standing barefoot on cracked tile. A hallway stretched ahead, lit by a cold blue glow, its walls wet and pulsing. The tiles clicked beneath her feet, twitching like insects. The hallway turned, curved, twisted downward into a spiral leading to a door. Always that door. No handle, just a slit at the bottom, wide enough for fingers. And the whisper again, clearer now. "You left me here. I never left you." She woke up on the floor. Bloody footprints led from the bed to the door and back again. Her feet were clean. By the fourth night, Leah stopped sleeping. Coffee, energy drinks, cold showers. She stayed up watching mindless TV with the volume too loud. But every time she closed her eyes, even for a moment, she was back in that hallway. Only now, the door was opening. Something on the other side was moving, shuffling, waiting. Rachel tried to help. "You've been under a lot of stress," she said. "It's just your brain freaking out. You need rest." "I don't want rest," Leah snapped. "I want out." On the sixth night, Leah passed out mid-sentence. One blink, awake in the kitchen. Next blink, back in the hallway. This time, it was different. She wasn't alone. There were marks along the walls, scratches, gouges, as if something with claws had paced the hallway for years. She saw dried handprints on the tiles, some small, some child-sized. The door was open. Inside was a room filled with mirrors, not normal mirrors. They reflected her, but different versions, one with blackened eyes and a stitched mouth, one with no face at all, one still bleeding from the eyes, whispering to herself over and over, "Wake up, wake up, wake up." Then one turned to look at her, not the reflection, the thing in the mirror. It moved independently, cocked its head. "Stay," it said. She screamed herself awake. Leah went to a sleep clinic. She was hooked up to wires and watched by white-coated technicians. She managed to stay conscious for the first 3 hours. Then, despite herself, she drifted. They had to sedate her when she began convulsing. Later, the technician approached with pale skin and trembling hands. "We've never seen anything like that," he whispered. "You weren't dreaming. Your brain wasn't in REM. It was somewhere else." He showed her the brain scan. The electrical pattern formed a spiral. Night 7. No sleep. No dreams. Still, the world began to fracture. She'd catch glimpses of the hallway in mirrors, in puddles in the corner of her eye. The whispers followed her into daylight. "You left me there." Her apartment smelled of mildew and rot. The bathroom tiles shifted underfoot. At night, she saw shadows standing just outside her window, staring. Rachel disappeared. She left for work and never came back. Leah found her phone buzzing on the floor, her last message unsent. "Don't open the door." By night 10, Leah gave in. She sat in the dark. No lights, no sound, just her and the shadow in the corner. She spoke to it. "I'm not afraid of you." The whisper came instantly. "Good. Now you can open it." She fell asleep without trying. The hallway greeted her like an old friend. No longer pulsing, no longer wet, just silent, dead, cold. She walked. The door was waiting, now wide open. Inside, the mirrors were broken, and in their place, versions of herself, limp, hanging from hooks, chained to walls. All of them spoke in unison. "You brought us here." A shape stepped forward from the shadows. It wore her skin. Its mouth was too wide, its fingers too long, its voice hers but twisted. "You dreamed of leaving, so we stayed. You forgot us, so we waited, but now you've come back." Leah tried to run. The hallway bent backwards. Hands grabbed her ankles, her wrists. Voices filled the air. "You sleep, we wake. You close your eyes, we open ours." She never woke up. Rachel's apartment was empty when police arrived, except for one thing. In the bedroom, scratched into the closet door, was a spiral, and beneath it, in Leah's handwriting, "I never left." Rain blurred the window pane as Thomas sat at his desk, staring across the street. His apartment on the third floor of a dull brick building faced another just like it, another tired block of cheap housing with identical square windows lined up in grimy rows. Most were dark, curtains drawn, lights off, but not the one across the street, the one in apartment 3B. That window glowed. Every night at 2:04 a.m., the light turned on. No earlier, no later, always 2:04. At first, Thomas thought nothing of it. Maybe a fellow insomniac, someone getting up for a glass of water or a late snack, but it was the consistency that began to gnaw at him. The light always flicked on at the exact same moment. Never 2:03, never 2:05. And the figure in the window, it never moved. He noticed it the second week he moved in. Thomas worked from home, freelancing as a copy editor, and often stayed up late reading or drinking coffee, his apartment lit only by the flicker of his laptop screen. When he'd stretch or look up from the page, his eyes would drift across the street. And there it would be. The figure, standing just behind the curtain of apartment 3B's window. A silhouette, broad-shouldered, unmoving. At first, he tried to dismiss it. A coat rack, a mannequin. But then, one night, the curtain moved. Only a little. Just a flutter. But the figure stayed completely still, unblinking, watching. He told his neighbor Maria about it during a cigarette break on the fire escape. She laughed. "You've got too much time on your hands." "I know what I saw," he said. "It's always there, at the exact same time, like clockwork." She smirked. "Maybe you've got a ghost admirer. Should leave your blinds open and see what happens." He didn't laugh. "I've been having weird dreams," he said, voice low. "About that window, about someone knocking from the inside." Maria's smile faded slightly. "You ever go over there?" He shook his head. "Then maybe don't." On the 12th night, curiosity won. He set an alarm for 1:55 a.m., brewed a fresh pot of coffee, and sat at his desk, phone recording in hand, eyes locked on apartment 3B. The building across the street was dark, and then at 2:04 exactly, the light flickered on. The figure appeared. This time, it was closer to the glass. Thomas zoomed in. There was no face, just a dark void where features should be. And the longer he stared, the more it looked like the void was moving, swirling, like smoke trapped behind skin. He blinked. The figure raised its hand and waved. He dropped the phone. By the time he picked it up again, the light was off, the window empty. The dreams worsened. Dark rooms, footsteps behind him. A pressure on his chest that grew heavier each time he opened his eyes. At dawn, he'd wake drenched in sweat. I had the image of the faceless man behind his eyelids. He stopped sleeping entirely. He boarded up his own window, moved his desk into the kitchen, but even then, he felt it. That window, that gaze, through walls, through wood, watching. One night at 2:04, the knocking began, not at his door, at his window. 3 slow taps, rhythmic, deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. He didn't move, didn't breathe. A pause. Then again, tap, tap, tap. This time louder, hungrier. He stood, grabbed a knife, and crept toward the boarded window. Another knock. Only it wasn't coming from the outside anymore. It was coming from inside the wall. He ripped down the boards. The street outside was empty. 3B's window was dark, no figure, no light, just his reflection in the glass. Except his reflection smiled. He didn't. The next day, he called the building across the street, asked about apartment 3B. The superintendent sounded confused. 3B's been vacant for years. No one's rented it since the fire. Thomas gripped the phone tighter. What fire? Electrical. Back in 2007. Whole unit went up. Guy inside didn't make it. Weird thing is, he was found by the window, standing, like he never tried to escape. Thomas hung up and stared at the window. That night, he waited. No camera, no recordings, just him in the dark. At 2:04, the light came on. But this time, the figure wasn't behind the glass. It was inside his room. Standing in the corner, its face still a swirling void, but now he could hear it. Whispering, hissing, the sound of breath in reverse. You opened the window. Thomas couldn't scream. The thing moved toward him. Not walked, glided, its limbs too long, its fingers dragging across the floor. You saw me. Now I see you. It reached toward him. Everything went black. When Maria knocked on his door the next morning, there was no answer. She let herself in. Thomas's laptop was still open, his coffee cold, but he was gone. Just the knife on the floor and the window wide open. Across the street, in apartment 3B, the light flicked on, and a new figure stood at the window. Watching. The basement beneath neon. The flyer was handed to Alyssa by a man without a face. Not faceless in the supernatural sense, he literally wore a smooth, featureless mask. It reflected the streetlights and passing headlights in strange, oily streaks as he pressed the crumpled paper into her hand, nodded once, and vanished into the Saturday night crowd. The flyer was simple, matte black, shiny red font that read, "The Basement. One night only. 77 Keegan Street. Entry at midnight. Ask for the red door." There was no website, no social media, but beneath it in tiny print, what you dance with stays with you. She thought it was a gimmick, an underground rave, maybe. And after a week like hers, getting ghosted, laid off, and overdrafted, Alyssa was ready to let loose. She slipped the flyer into her jacket and didn't think about it again until 11:55 p.m., standing outside the rusting warehouse at 77 Keegan. It looked abandoned, no lights, no sound, just a single steel door, painted red, tucked between dumpsters. Alyssa knocked once. The door creaked open. There was no cover charge, no line, no ID check. Inside, a hallway led down, narrow and steep, lined with flickering red bulbs and covered in old tattered posters written in languages she didn't recognize. The walls dripped moisture. The music was low, a throbbing pulse she could feel in her teeth. The hallway opened into a vast underground chamber. It was beautiful. Blood-red light bathed the dance floor in a smoky haze. The DJ stood behind a wall of twisted metal, face covered by an elaborate gold mask. Shadows moved through the crowd, bodies locked in slow, hypnotic rhythm. No one spoke, no one screamed, no one smiled, but they danced, and it was contagious. Alyssa felt herself pulled in, first by the music, then by the atmosphere. Something about the place was magnetic, dreamlike. The air smelled like incense and old perfume. The walls seemed to breathe. She joined the floor. The music wasn't anything she recognized. It was ancient, primal, a blend of whispering strings and deep, echoing drums. Her limbs moved like they weren't her own, like the beat had seeped into her bones. She locked eyes with a dancer in the crowd, tall, pale, wearing what looked like a 19th century funeral suit. He smiled. His teeth were black. She looked away. Time became slippery. She danced with strangers whose faces never stayed the same. A woman in a backless dress whose eyes rolled in opposite directions. A man with no shadow who whispered in a dead language. They circled her, never touching, always moving. The walls throbbed. The floor seemed to pulse with every beat. When she finally stumbled away to get a drink, she found no bar. Just a man with hollow eyes holding a silver tray of black liquid in crystal glasses. She drank. It tasted like ash and sugar. In the bathroom, if it could be called that, there were no mirrors, just smooth, red-tinted walls and a single sink stained dark. She tried to splash water on her face, but nothing came out. When she turned, she saw her reflection anyway, on the wall, shimmering, only it didn't move when she did. It smiled. She did not. Back on the dance floor, the lights shifted, from red to violet to a deep, oily black. The DJ raised both hands. The music stopped. Silence fell like a guillotine. One by one, the dancers turned to face her. All of them. Their heads twitched in unison. Their limbs moved like marionettes, jerky, mechanical. The floor beneath her opened like a mouth. She fell. Darkness. Silence. Then music again. But this time, not rhythmic. It was a lullaby sung in reverse. She was in a different room. Smaller. Stone walls. A circle of candles flickering with black flames. In the center, a man sat cross-legged, no eyes, no mouth, skin sewn shut. But he spoke anyway, through her mind. "You've danced too long. You've been chosen." She tried to run. The floor stretched. The candles grew taller. Hands rose from the shadows, hundreds of them, clutching her legs, her arms, her throat. Then she was back, on the dance floor. Gasping, gasping, alone. Everyone was gone. The lights were out. The DJ booth empty. The music now just a heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. She ran to the red door. It wasn't there, only brick. She pounded on the wall screaming. No one came. From behind her, the whispering began, soft at first, then louder. She turned. The dancers were there again, only this time their eyes glowed, their faces stretched, and they danced toward her, bodies bending in impossible ways, cracking with each step, and in the center of the floor, a mirror. She stepped toward it. Her reflection danced alone, smiling, blood dripping from its mouth. They say 77 Keegan doesn't exist anymore. The warehouse was condemned years ago, torn down. But sometimes if you're walking that street after midnight, you'll hear the music. Low, hypnotic. And if you're given the flyer, don't go, because once you dance at the basement, you don't leave. You just keep dancing. When Mason bought the old farmhouse in June, he thought he'd found peace. 3 acres of overgrown land, a crumbling red barn, a wraparound porch with vines climbing the columns. It had stood empty for years, tucked at the edge of a forgotten valley where the mist rolled in low and the GPS stopped working halfway down the dirt road. It was perfect. Quiet, remote, cheap. Just what he wanted after the divorce. But on the 3rd night he heard the sound. It came just after 3 a.m. A low, hollow knocking from somewhere inside the walls. Not pipes, not animals. Rhythmic. Slow. Like someone rapping on drywall with the meat of their fist. Knock. Knock, knock. He sat up in bed, heart thudding. The sound stopped when his feet hit the floor. He checked the doors, the windows. Nothing. Outside, the fog clung to the glass like breath. The next night it came again, 3:01 a.m. exactly. Knock, 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 this time from the ceiling. He lay perfectly still, barely breathing. Knock, knock, knock. It grew louder. Closer. He turned on every light in the house and stayed up until dawn, pacing the floors. When the sun rose, the house fell silent again. By the end of the week, Mason started recording. He set his phone on the nightstand and hit record at 2:50 a.m. every night. Each morning, he listened. At exactly 3:01, always the same. 3 knocks, followed by breathing. Close. Wet. Uneven. As if something stood inches from the microphone. One night, the breathing turned into a whisper. Let me in. He called a contractor. No signs of damage, no mold, no vermin. The wire nation was solid. You might be hearing echoes, the contractor said. Old houses carry sound weird. Mason didn't mention the recordings, didn't mention how he now saw figures in the corners of rooms that vanished when he blinked. He tried sleeping in the guest room. 3:01 a.m. Knock, knock, knock. From under the bed. He didn't move. Let me in, the voice said. He locked himself in the bathroom and sat in the tub until sunrise. The town librarian, an elderly woman named June, was the only one who didn't think he was crazy. That place, she said, peering over her glasses, that used to be the Holloway farm, abandoned after the fire. What fire? Back in the 50s, family of 6. Whole place burned to the ground. They rebuilt, but no one stayed more than a few months after. Folks said the youngest son got trapped in the walls, screamed for hours. Firemen couldn't find him. She lowered her voice. Some say he's still there, still knocking. Mason stopped sleeping. He taped the vents. He boarded the attic. Still, every night, knock, knock, knock. One night, he shouted back, "What do you want?" Silence. Then, "You." The next morning, claw marks ran across the inside of his bedroom mirror. He hadn't noticed it before, but the wood paneling along the hallway outside his room sounded hollow. He knocked once. Something knocked back. He tore the wall open that afternoon. Behind it, nothing but empty space and dust. No wires, no pipes, just a narrow crawl space, maybe 2 feet wide, stretching into the dark. And at the far end, a small wooden door. No handle, no hinges, just a slit at the bottom, wide enough for fingers. That night, he dreamed of fire, smoke choking him, flames crawling across the ceiling, a child screaming behind a wall. He woke up at 3:01, to silence, no knocking. He sighed with relief until he noticed the wall was wet. He reached out, and something grabbed his wrist. He screamed and fell back, crawling away as the wall began to bulge, boards cracking outward like ribs. From the crawl space, fingers pushed through, small. Burnt, scrabbling. Then the knocking returned, furious, violent, from everywhere, the floor, the ceiling, the inside of his skull. Let me in. He ran out the front door, into the fog, into the trees. He didn't stop until the sun came up. Mason returned at noon with a can of gasoline. He didn't pack, he didn't wait. He poured it through every room, up the stairs, into the crawl space. The last thing he saw before lighting the match was the small wooden door at the end of the wall. It was open, but just a crack, enough to see a single staring eye inside. Black. Burning. Watching. They say the fire took hours to die. By the time the fire trucks arrived, the house was ash. They found no remains, no bones, only a single scorched recording device, warped but intact. They played it back. At 3:01 a.m. it begins. Knock. Then a voice, low, hollow, smiling. Now I'm out. Grave Revelry, a 2,000-word horror story. Everyone knew the cemetery party was a bad idea, but when Aaron pulled up in his old van, full of beer, speakers, and friends shouting at the night sky, the gates of Wexler Cemetery were already open. Literally, wide open. Rusty iron parted like hands waiting to receive. No one lived near Wexler anymore. The town dried up years ago, mines closed, shops boarded, the school abandoned, but the graveyard remained, tucked on a hill beneath crooked trees, stones worn smooth by wind and time. "It's perfect," said Cassie, already tipsy. "Let's wake the dead." Aaron laughed. "Hell yeah." It started like every other party. Music, drinking, flashlights, bobbing like fireflies in the dark. They danced between crumbling headstones, posed for selfies with angel statues, and dared each other to touch the oldest grave. 1872, the name so eroded it looked like a scream. There were 9 of them. Aaron, Cassie, Tyler, Jules, Mark, Emily, Nadia, Victor, and Jenna. All seniors. All desperate to do something reckless before summer ended. By 1 a.m., someone lit sparklers. Cassie pulled a Bluetooth speaker onto an overturned crypt and screamed, "Grave rave, baby." The music pulsed through the earth. The fog rolled in thicker. The air grew wet. That's when the ground started to move. It wasn't dramatic at first, just a faint shift like settling soil. Tyler tripped over a mound that hadn't been there before. "Hey!" he called out, frowning. "Was this grave always open?" Everyone laughed, until they saw it too. A hole. Deep. Fresh. No coffin. No dirt piled nearby. Just a perfectly round pit, as if something had clawed its way up. "Maybe the caretaker started digging," Aaron offered, swallowing the unease in his throat. "Who the hell buries people at night?" asked Emily. Cassie peered into the hole, phone light trembling. Something was at the bottom. Not bones, a mask. Porcelain white, cracked down the middle with hollow eyes and a smile carved too wide. Cassie reached for it. Aaron grabbed her wrist. "Don't." She yanked free. "Relax. It's probably Halloween junk. Let's keep it." She lifted the mask from the dirt. The music cut out. The lights died. The fog swallowed their voices. They stood in a circle, shivering. Phones wouldn't turn on. The speaker was silent. Even the sparklers had fizzled mid-flare. Cassie still held the mask. Then, from somewhere deeper in the graveyard, laughter. Not theirs. Not human. A dry, cracking sound like branches breaking under weight. "What the hell was that?" Mark whispered. "Probably another group messing with us," said Victor, though his voice lacked conviction. More laughter. Closer now. Cassie clutched the mask. "Let's just go." They turned toward the gates. They were closed. Chained. A rusted lock the size of a fist hung between the bars. "I swear it was open," Aaron muttered. Then, from the fog, movement. A figure stepped out, wearing a white mask. The same mask. Another stepped beside it, then a third. All dressed in funeral black suits, their faces blank and gleaming. They stood perfectly still, just watching. Then they began to walk. Not run. Walk. Slowly. Unstoppably. The group scattered. Cassie ran toward the woods, heart hammering. Behind her, leaves crackled. Footsteps. She turned. No one. Then a whisper from the trees. "Put it back." She screamed, flung the mask into the dark, and sprinted. She never came out. Aaron and Jules hid behind a mausoleum. "We need to break the lock," Jules whispered. "Climb the wall." "There's 9-foot spikes," Aaron said. "We'll get impaled." More figures appeared in the distance, moving among the graves. Too many. More than 9. More than 20. Each wore the same mask. Each had the same slow, lurching gait, like remembering how to walk. Then Jules gasped. One of them looked just like Cassie. Same shoes, same necklace. "That's not possible," she said. But it walked with the others. And the mask, it wasn't on her face. It was her face, stretched in a permanent, too-wide grin. Emily, Mark, and Tyler made it back to the van, but the tires were slashed. The keys were missing. The music system inside the van was playing again, only backward. Static. Screaming. A voice repeating, "Beneath, beneath, beneath." "I'm done," Tyler said. "I'm not dying in a Scooby-Doo episode." He sprinted toward the wall, tried to climb. Spikes tore his jacket, then his skin. He screamed once before slipping. When he hit the ground, he didn't move. Emily turned away and saw a figure standing just outside the van. Face pale, no mask. Tyler, smiling. "Let me in," he said, tapping the window. Mark backed up. More Tylers were coming, and one looked like Emily. Victor and Jenna found the chapel, a ruined stone building with shattered stained glass and vines growing through the altar. Inside, the floor had rotted through. A staircase led down into a crypt. "Maybe we can hide," Jenna whispered. Victor nodded. They descended into darkness. At the bottom, dozens of coffins, most open, most empty. A single candle burned in the center of the room. Beside it, a small wooden box, carved with a symbol. Two masks, one smiling, one crying, locked together at the mouth. Inside the box, another mask, still warm. Back above, Aaron and Jules reached the oldest part of the graveyard. The fog cleared just enough to reveal a massive stone circle. 13 pillars, cracked and blackened, stood around a pit. Within the pit, masks. Hundreds of them, all smiling. Aaron heard his name, turned. His own face stared back, on someone else's body, wearing his hoodie, his shoes, his grin. It reached out. Jules screamed. In the chapel, Victor placed the mask on the candle's flame. It didn't burn. It screamed. The crypt walls pulsed. The masks in the pit outside began to twitch. The figures across the cemetery stopped, turned. One by one, they dropped to the ground and began to crawl toward the chapel. Jenna panicked and ran upstairs, straight into a figure wearing her face. Its smile twitched. "Stay," it whispered. Jenna fell backward into the pit of coffins. Her scream cut off as the lid slammed shut. Victor grabbed the box and ran. Outside, everything was wrong. The trees bled, the headstones cracked and leaked black fog. The figures no longer walked, they floated, silent, grinning. Aaron appeared beside him, eyes wild. "Bury it," he gasped. "Bury the box." They ran to the first open grave, the one from earlier. Still empty. Together they threw the box inside. The earth trembled, the fog screamed, then silence. The masks collapsed. The fog faded, the gate creaked open. By sunrise, only 3 were left: Aaron, Victor, and Emily. No sign of the others, no sign of the figures, just silence, and the hole now filled. They didn't speak as they walked away. Months later, back in town, Aaron got another flyer, slipped under his door, black paper, red ink. The grave revelry returns, one night only. Beneath, we only need one more mask. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. We'll see you in the next one. Sleep well.